Good morning, Kellan Fluckiger from Laguna Beach, California. Having finished up my Warrior Week program for the last 4 days and a half, solid, quite an exercise in breaking the cage. I see with my mouth moving that my internet connection's a little slow. I'm in a hotel, a beautiful hotel right across from the beach. So we'll just have to deal today with the fact that my mouth is a little behind my words. Sometimes we get that way when our thoughts are a little ahead of our mouths, and we say things when our mouths are ahead of our thoughts that we don't mean later, right? Okay. Today we're going to talk about self-love. This is a perfect topic for Christmas. It's a perfect topic for the holidays. It's a perfect topic given the experience that I just went through. It's a perfect topic when thinking about sometimes the blues and the problems experienced around the holidays, and a perfect topic to get ready for the new year. That's 4 times perfect. So I guess we're doing the right thing today. Here's the question I want you to start with. Every one of us has a self-perception. We have a belief system or paradigm system about who we are and what we mean. Not just to ourselves, but what we mean to others. That isn't what they think of us, it's what we think they think of us. And what we think the world thinks of us. And even what we think God may think of us. All of those things wrapped together. What we think of ourselves, what we imagine that others think of us, and what we imagine that God thinks of us, wrap up into a self-image. What I can tell you for sure today, this morning, right now, December 13, 2014, is that most of that is wrong. Who and what we are is not accurately reflected in that self-image. For those of you numerology buffs, today is 12, 13, 14. I don't actually know what that means, but I'm sure those of you that study that will know that it means something. So today is 12, 13, 14, and I want to launch you on a journey this morning about exploring the sources of your self-image, exploring the sources of your self-concept. Let's see if they're dependable. Let's see if they're trustworthy. Let's see if they are a good foundation, or if we very likely should adjust them. So let's start with the first piece. What we think of ourselves. And usually when we think of ourselves, the first thing we think of is our failures. We think about the times we have not measured up. We think about the times we have failed to do what others expected us to do. We think about the times that we have fallen short. Those are the first images, usually, that come to mind. Our embarrassments, our frustrations, and our failures. And then as a distant second, we subtract some of the negativity with our successes. That is obviously, and I say obviously, because if you were to talk to a friend and ask them how they were, and the only thing they listed for you was everything they had failed at in the last day, week, month, you would say, well, now wait a minute. And as a friend, you would remind them about a number of positive things. In fact, you would not say, you're right, you really suck, man. That is not what you do. And so the first element of what we think of ourselves, our self-image, which is our own opinion, is immediately suspect because we are more prone to remember our failures. We're more prone to remember those times when we've disappointed ourselves, we didn't do what we said, and so forth. So what do we do about that? Well, the first thing we do about that is to recognize it's not an appropriate self-concept. The second thing we do is we get clear about the actual essence of our being. If you choose, or if I choose, to think of myself fundamentally as a weak or failing person, or someone who usually doesn't cut it, or someone who usually isn't successful, you know what? In that situation, we will end up feeling like I'm a failure. On the other hand, if you recognize the true divine nature of the center of your being, you are a being created with divine purpose and intent. So let's just take that single concept right now. If you're a person, an entity, created with divine purpose and intent, then one of two things has to be true. Either you're powerful, you have a spark of divinity, and you have awesome gifts and talents, or God, the Creator, is a mess up and doesn't know what he's doing. So we're going to discard the second one out of hand, because the same God created the earth and the heavens and the stars and the intelligence, everything there is. So let's just dismiss that other as utter nonsense. So then the only solution left, however much we might argue about it, is that you are a divine being with power, creativity, and the spark of divinity. So let's just go down that road for a minute. We often argue with that concept. We argue with that concept because sometimes we're afraid of failure, but more often we're afraid it might be true. I saw a video once, and I would attribute it right now, but I can't remember who did it, with a quote in it that said, "We're not afraid that we're weak and powerless. Our deepest fear is that we might be powerful beyond reason." We might be powerful beyond reason. So let's go back to the essence of ourselves. We're a divine being with gifts and talents and a divine spark of creativity. That lines up a lot more with this powerful beyond reason thought, not with any of the other negative things. So let's start from that premise for a moment. Let's start from the premise of a newborn babe. Now, baby, all of you have experience with little kids. They learn to look at someone, they learn to smile, they learn to eventually learn to eat themselves and walk and do all that. But in that process, there's many, many failures. They stand up and fall down. They stand up next to a chair and fall down. They try to eat and rub the spoon all over their cheek and nose and face, and then play with their hands. And we laugh and we think they're developing. And every time, the first time they hit the mouth with the spoon, we rejoice. Now, in that embryonic state, and I'm not talking about in the womb, but embryonic here is development of the physical aspects of life, we rejoice at the progress and we rejoice at every success. And we laugh sometimes at the mistakes, but we never, never consider it appropriate to denigrate or to say bad things about the baby. And if the baby somehow instinctually knows nothing's wrong and laughs and joins in the fun, but if the baby somehow were able to articulate something and screamed at themselves and called themselves names because they missed the mouth with the spoon, or because they fell down trying to walk, or pooped their pants trying to do potty training, we would be horrified. We would be horrified. We would do everything we possibly could to get rid of that kind of nonsense. But we do that grown up all the time. We think somehow because we've learned the physical aspects of life, walking, talking, eating, working, making a little bit of money, that somehow we're supposed to be perfect or near perfect in other aspects and have a sense of completion. And when we have that same series of mistakes and we, in an adult way, splat the spoon on our nose or cheeks or face, and maybe even in a silly way rub food on our face a little, then we launch into this long tirade of denigration, I was going to use a big word, abnegation, self-loathing, self-criticism, that kind of thing. Even, cutting ourselves down and so forth. That's the first place, is not healthy, and it's not true. So in a foundational way, being not healthy is one thing. It's simply not true. Every mistake that I make and that you make is a learning process. It's an opportunity to say, that didn't work out the way I want. I'm going to do that differently. So the first place to get this, sorry, my nose is running. The first place to get this squared away is in the true realization of who you are. Now, I just had a chance to give a talk on Thursday at this conference, and the subject of my talk was, who are you and what do you stand for? So I am a divine being with gifts, talents, and opportunities, who is still very much in the development process, very much in the mode and mood to make mistakes and to learn and grow. And much like the young child physically, we are young and inexperienced, energetically and spiritually, as we learn to develop our relationships, as we learn to develop our skills and talents, and as we learn to function well on our own, maximize those gifts and talents, unleash the power that we have, and add good to the world. So that's what I have to say about the first piece of that, which is the flawed notion we have of ourselves. When that's squared away, it is as easy to love ourselves as it is to love the small baby who is making funny but failing attempts to put food in their mouth or to stand up and walk. Understanding the absolute truth of what I just said is the first key to changing that self-concept, breaking the cage of self-depreciation and of self-bad talk, if you were, the negative self-concept or self-paradigm. We're going to move on to the next part, which is our imagined, what we imagine or believe that others think of us, in a minute. But at this time, I wanted, George Green is here, who's been my producer for this show, and want to ask George if he's got a comment and would like to add something in at this point, or Rick, who's just joined us.
I'll jump in while Rick is getting ready to unmute his microphone. I think it's critical that we really drop anchor within ourselves and start feeling and listening in, because our self-talk, those hallucinations of unworthiness, whatever the language is, operates constantly, and it operates underneath our conscious awareness. And until we wake up to the feelings of either self-love, which are expansive and energetic, or the self-talk of not worthy, which is contractive and heavy, when we identify those, we can make new choices. And also when we're aware of our self-talk that is denigrating, make new choices and bless that shadow, we will move forward. So my curiosity is, what's your advice, Kellan, on how to begin to manage and cultivate a greater awareness of our internal self-talk?
I'll answer that. It's a great question. I've just switched microphones because I realized I was on the wrong one, so I probably sound a little different, but that's the way it goes. Rick, you have any comments you'd like to add at this point?
I noticed George's use of the word hallucinations, and I thought that was interesting because hallucinations don't always have to be bad. Sometimes they can be very exciting. The thing that scares me is the fear that I'm hallucinating, that I'm better than I actually am, and there's stuff I have to learn before I can be effective at a level where I believe I'm being effective, and that makes me nervous sometimes, that I don't know enough yet. And you know that about me, Kellan. We've talked about that plenty. That I never seem to feel like, yeah, I probably ought to learn a little bit more about that too. But I thought George's use of the word hallucination was very interesting.
You know, I tweaked on the same thing, the word hallucination, and I like it. So let's talk about both George's question about how to do this and your idea that maybe your hallucinations are better than they are and that you really do suck and that you're thinking you don't. So let's, not you, but I mean us in general. So let's talk about both of those. Number one, the feedback that we get from the world in terms of reaching or not reaching our objectives is all the feedback you need about whether or not you're successful. If you do what you want to do, then you are good enough. You did it. If you don't do what you want to do and it fails to get there, then that is a piece of feedback that says there's an adjustment that needs to be made. But that adjustment that needs to be made will only be known when you have done something. Gathering more information is an absolute fatal heart shot, a fatal rifle shot to progress. When we spend too much time, as most of us or many of us are prone to do, because of the fear of failure or fear of not getting it done, we guarantee never to start, and we guarantee failure. So you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You miss 100% of the targets you never shoot at. You know that. We know that. We all know that. Part of one of the tools of paralysis is to think about things too long. It is to plan too much. It is to wait until we are aiming too long. We do that because we want to make sure we hit the target, and the answer is, in this day and age, particularly at the speed things move, the target has moved. And so ready, fire, steer is the answer. It is going to be the answer every time we discuss this question for all of you. Ready, fire, steer. Things are moving too much. The desires that people have, whoever you're serving in the market, the technology that's going on, the demographics, and the desires people have to be fulfilled. What we want is changing. How to fill it changes at some level. Our deepest human need to be loved and so forth in terms of Maslow's hierarchy doesn't change much. And so it doesn't take very long to aim at those things either. So my point is always going to be ready, fire, steer, because we just take too much time aiming. So let's talk about for a minute George's question, which is how to do that. So it is a daily practice. I'm going to give you a daily ritual to do. I was talking to someone yesterday at this event that I'm at, and they have a particular ritual which is similar to mine. And so I'm going to share some of this with you. Okay? Every day we have circumstances and things where we feel inadequate. We have things that we say that afterwards we go, that didn't sound right, or it was a complete disaster, or it was kind of right but it didn't really do the trick, or things that we do that didn't quite meet the mark. We have some that hit it square on and we did exactly what we meant to and so forth, but we usually expect them all to be that way, and so we have a pile of things at the end of every day. We have a pile of things at the end of every day that we think, that could have gone better. On most days. There's occasionally a day when we just feel like it was home run, but most of the time we do. So what if you adopted a ritual? You adopted a ritual in the morning or in the evening, but preferably in the morning, because I like to set up my days powerfully, where the first thing you do is create a feeling of gratitude. Think about all the things you have, all the things you are, all the people who look up to, who like to be around, look up to you, like to be around you, want to hear what you have to say. Your kids, your family, your friends, people that want to talk to you, that are glad when you're there. Your own personal health, feet, arms, hands, legs, eyes. I wear 4 contact lenses, and I had hereditary hearing loss. There was a miraculous fix to some of that, but it still isn't perfect. So I have some physical things that get in the way. But you know what? I operate really well without worrying about that. I've dislocated a shoulder, knee, and broken things that still have residual effects. Because of my athletic stuff and martial arts, I have arthritis in different joints. So what? I can move, I can walk, I can do things. So a list of things that we're grateful for is actually easy to come by. If we start with that, that puts us in a mood of appreciation and gratitude. The next thing to think about is all of the incidents yesterday that weakened you, that were not good enough, that were embarrassing, that were, all of those things. Think about them. Draw them firmly and fully into consciousness. Embrace them. Yes, that was this way. That was not exactly what I meant. That was a disaster. Bring them all into full focus and consciousness. And then amplify them. I am not. Oh, no, it's never going to work. And 2 things will happen. One, when you start to amplify those and you bring them all into consciousness, you will realize how silly and how funny all of that sounds when you look at what they really were. Now, again, once in a while we have days that are really bad. But 99% of the days, the things that we stress so hard about are not the end of the world. And even the ones that were big, like I went to do a sales meeting and it was a big contract and it didn't happen, they blew me off, that isn't going to end the world either. So collect all of those feelings, find them. Oh, it makes my stomach ache, it makes my head ache, it makes my throat tight, it makes me want to cry, whatever it is. And then I love to use music, or I love to use a mantra, but as those things are all collected into one place, right in front of you, consciously release them. Release them in light, release them in the power of your being, and consciously go through a ritual of releasing. You can do it with breath, you can do it with music, but the act of gathering all of those things from wherever they are in your body, consciously collecting them and releasing them, is a way to start every day in power instead of in weakness. It is a way to start every day with a clean slate instead of starting it with black crayon marks all over the place. So that is one way to answer George's question about how to start to create a better self-image. So I'm going to move on really quickly since we've talked. Oh, it's 22. Okay. There are two other areas. The second area that I talked about is our imagination or our perception of what others think of us. I want to pop a bubble that lots of people have, and that is that other people are spending an awful lot of time thinking about what they think about you. They're not. Hate to be disappointing, but most people are busy worrying about their own problems. They're not sitting around spending a lot of time thinking about what you mean or don't mean to them or what you did or didn't do. So in the first place, we don't occupy a huge part of most others' minds. They're busy thinking about the meetings they're late to, not prepared for, need to be ready to do their own kids' problems, their own situations, their own employment, financial, physical, and emotional situations. So they're not spending very much time thinking about us. And when they are, they're not anywhere near as negative as we sometimes pretend they are. I know this to be true because I have engaged in intentional conversations with people about this topic and ask them, and the situations are such that I know they're being honest. There's always a chance that people blow smoke, but I know people are being honest, and the feedback I get is quite a bit different than the picture I had in my mind about what they might be thinking. So number one, people are not spending anywhere near as much time worrying about the things we think they're thinking about. And number two, their perception is not anywhere near as negative as we imagine that it is, and the cause of that is not hard to understand. We focus on every negative aspect of a situation. Okay, negative draws more attention than positive. We can create a habit not to do that. That's another topic. We focus on that. They don't. When you look, let's just give an example. When you're sitting in the audience and someone is up there presenting and they make some mistakes and they stumble a bit, you're not hating them. In fact, you're the opposite. You're rooting for them. You're hoping that they recover, that they get it together. You're trying in your mind to figure out what they meant so that you can make sense out of it. Partly because you're thinking, did I not understand that? Am I left behind? And partly because you care about that person. That is the natural inclination, is to hope that they win. You're not up there hoping that they lose, hoping that they screw up and fall down. We just don't do that, by and large. So the notion that other people have this gigantic negative attitude of us is simply not founded in reality. If we're really interested in that, we could be bold and go ask several people, well, how did that feel to you? Be honest with me, and if we trust them and they trust us, you can get some real feedback, and they will tell you, well, that part wasn't so good, but the other parts are really good, whatever. And so taking that opportunity to do that is key in developing an accurate impression of what others think of you. The third element, and I'm going to do this and then we'll open it up to comments one more time, is what God thinks of us, or what we look like to the world or the universe. Let's just say, if God created people for whatever purpose, his own purpose, and I have a really firm idea of what that is, but this isn't the time and place for that. So let's just say there was a purpose known to that being for our creation and our existence here on the earth. It wasn't for a play. It wasn't for amusement. It wasn't for a drama comedy any more than we have our own children for that purpose. The purpose was for our development, to have experiences and to learn and grow. In many sacred texts, it is simply written that man is that he might have joy, that God created man to have joy, to live and learn and love and enjoy this existence, create good things and use power to do that which is creative and good. So the notion that that creator or the universe sits around and thinks about how awful we are is even more ridiculous than thinking the audience thinks that. If anyone is rooting for our success and hoping and providing assets and opportunities for our growth, it would be the creation spirit, the creator, or God. So when you add those three things together, the idea that we carry around of ourselves, and consequently when we're negative about who we are and what we do, is not founded on reality, particularly in the first instance. and obviously to me, in the second and third instance, of the opinion of others and the opinion of the Creator, of who we are and what we do. I would also have you consider that that's even true when we make mistakes. If there is, I mean, not if, there is a Creator who created this situation. He didn't create it for us to completely fail and be miserable. He created it for us to learn and to stumble, much like a child learning to walk. So let's combine that into a holistic view. Adopting a routine or ritual in the morning to cleanse your heart and mind of the negative images, the failures, and the shortcomings is a powerful tool. Adopting a benevolent view, a mirror of your own view of others, about their thoughts toward you, is a more appropriate stance than focusing on the negative. And adopting a view of complete love and desire for success toward God is a far more appropriate stance. All of those are choices. Now, we may have habits that gravitate us toward the negative, just like negative news cells. Those habits can be changed and must be changed if we're going to develop the kind of self-love that really unleashes creativity and power. If we have time left, we'll talk about those habits that we can develop in just a minute. I want to see if either Rick or George have comments on what we've just talked about in terms of the opinions and feelings of others and of the Creator towards our foibles and mistakes.
I agree 100% with you, Kellan. In the necessity to create a ceremony and a morning practice shortly after your eyes are open and your head lifts off the pillow. And for me, my process, I put yesterday in the rearview mirror, quite literally through vision, whatever my narratives were yesterday that were less than claiming victory, I put behind me. And then I pre-frame my day to be in alignment with what I know in my faith is my purpose and alignment with creation and my Creator. However you do it, to start your morning with intention, to imagine from already having, to create from within the vision of the outcome of your day. It starts out in, like a lot of people say, you got to fake it until you make it. You have to start that process and make it a ceremony. Just like when you get up, you brush your teeth, and you do your pre-frame. You vision your day from that moment forward to be in victory. And sooner or later, it becomes your truth. So I love your invitations, and that's my add to.
Rick, any comments?
You reminded me of something that I think of from time to time, but probably nowhere frequently enough, and that is that I have things to contribute to people, and I'm here for a purpose. And if I'm being too inwardly focused and worrying about about how I'm coming across or whether I'm saying things exactly the right way or not, then I'm not doing the one thing that I really am here to do, which is to serve other people and to add value to their lives, given the gifts and talents that have been bestowed upon me. I have a responsibility in my creation, in the fact that I am a product of the Creator, to put those things to good use for the benefit of people around me and people who I may never come into contact with. I heard a great piece of music last night that was written 150 years ago. Well, the composer certainly never knew that I was going to be here and listen to it and be moved by it, but he still did it.
So let me conclude today's broadcast with the following thought. Rick touched on something about an obligation. If there is anything that we have an obligation to do to fill the purpose and the measure of our creation, it is to make the most of who and what we are. George suggested, and I suggested also before that, a morning ritual or ceremony or process
There are many, and if you want to talk more about that, hit me up and I'll give you a whole bunch of ideas. But there are many ways. The key is a commitment to do it daily. The key is to take 10 or 15 minutes, or 5 even if you want to do that. But take some minutes to intentionally dismiss yesterday. Yesterday's only good for 2 things. It tells us where we start today, because we have to start where we left off. And number 2, it teaches us a few lessons if we're willing to learn. Beyond that, yesterday is not relevant. So create a ritual that lets you dismiss yesterday, that lets you dismiss it in a way that it doesn't have tentacles and fishhooks lingering into today's activities. Create a vision of activity and alignment, a plan that is both visual and activity-based, that is in alignment with your true purpose. Now, your true purpose may be supporting your family, or it may be adding good to the world in one or another way. Add Good to the World is a program that I had at one point. But whatever your desire is to do good and to be the most expansive and best version of yourself, create your day in alignment with that. See it, feel it, know that it is within your reach, and at the same time know that every plan has detours on the way, and accept those with grace and good humor. But dismiss yesterday, create today with a powerful vision and focus. Allow the love of the Creator or God to permeate your being and existence. Allow yourself the privilege and blessing of loving your divine nature and your opportunity to add good to the world. Don't delay. Do not operate from a place of fear. Instead, operate from a place of power and certainty. You deserve it, and you can develop that. In this 30-minute program, we don't have time to go through the creation of ritual, and that is another topic that we can cover. But doing it is essential. I want to remind you as we end today, breaking the cage is the process of casting off paradigms, barriers, boundaries, and limitations that create negative gravity on our self-talk, self-story, and self-view. Breaking the cage is about breaking out from those paradigms, creating from a place of power, a place of purity, and of desire to add good to the world and do what you came here to do. So if we do nothing else today, end this broadcast and feeling with a resolve to break the cage, to do more, be more, and create in alignment with the purpose and desire of your heart. Thank you, and we'll see you next Saturday on Break the Cage Now.